of 2023 from 4.22 billion naira in June 2022. Other income increased by 24.9% to 490 million naira from 393 million naira. Revenue declined by 16.3% to 3.2 billion naira in June 2023 from 3.82 billion naira recorded in June 2022. Analysts believe Nigerians should be hopeful of better days ahead.
Nigeria is a country that depends solely on oil for the development of its country. So now the introduction of the tax policy, it's a good one, because if the tax policy is effectively implemented, it's going to go a long way in developing sectors in Nigeria.
There's a lot of leakages in collecting tax. A lot of people, companies, individuals eligible to pay tax are deviating from paying tax. But being a self-knowledge presently in the country, he came on board to implement this project.
In the meantime, price of petrol may rise further as international market data gathered revealed that commodity has gained 20%. At the beginning of 2023, Brent crude traded around $78 per barrel. However, last week the international benchmark hit $83 per barrel. With business news, Tokwe Alabi.
Many thanks, Tokba, for the business news package, and good morning, Nigeria. Up next, we'll take a look at the stories on the window pages of some newspapers this morning.
And Chukwudi Abuja is here to do the analysis. It's my pleasure to introduce him to this segment. Chukwudi, welcome to the show.
Kirian, it's my pleasure to be here as well. Hello, Kingsley. Good morning.
Morning. Good to see you.
Same here.
You had a pleasant evening. Slightly wet morning in the Federal Capital Territory today.
Yes. Wet.
Yeah, it was wet last night. All of a sudden, the weather forecast seemed to have been off course.
Yes. I was getting worried when there was cessation of rain for about 11 days. I'm happy the crops are smiling again.
That's right.
All right. We have a
well, the front page leaders are predictable, excerpts from the president's broadcasts and highlights also of the relief package. Kieran?
Yeah. Let's begin with the Punch newspaper. The Punch above the name flag. Senate screens 14, tackles nominees over age and tax. It's on page 29. External reserves shed $167 million as Naira slumps further. It's on page 20. Tinubu decorates service chiefs, generals, pledge loyalty. Okay, that's on page 7. Now, below the name flag, the lead story. Subsidy pains. Labour insists on protest as Tinubu okays 500 billion naira palliative, 3,000 buses. With riders to that, federal government plans wage increase, 3,000 buses. Others resumes talks with the NLC today. NLC faults federal government's reforms. Lagos slashes fares as protest rock Oyo and Osun states. You get all that on pages 2, 6, and 29 of the Punch newspaper. Gallant Falcons pocket 1 billion naira, reach World Cup last 16. That's on page 31. Fuel price hike. Drivers threaten to dump Bolt and Uber. It's on page 21. Now, at the bottom of the paper this morning, over 23,000 Nasarawa residents battling hepatitis, according to the ministry. Read more on that on page 7. Bandits kill agents delivering ransom to Plateau kidnappers. That's on page 8 now. Now, on page 30, Niger junta arrests top politicians. Germany withdraws aid. That's on page 50. Maybe you have to take the nation before I return to this.
Or you just take leadership.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. Let's turn to leadership newspaper. Innovation. UNESCO backs Oshimbajo's organization. It's on page 6. Diphtheria kills 83 in 7 states and the FCT. It's on page 7. Head of service accuses MDAs of abusing recruitment waivers. It's on page 7. Now, Senate screens weaker 13 other nominees. 9 take a bow. It's on page 7. Now, hardship. Tinubu begs for understanding. Labour insists on strike. On page 4. Leadership postpones conference on drug abuse. On page 6. NSA meets Southeast governors over killings. The whole story is on page 7. Naseni seeks ban on solid minerals export. Get it on page 18. All right. Of course, the photo story, the illustration there is the rollout of government. They ruled out more palliative measures. You can there are indications there that you can possibly have a better understanding of his broadcast yesterday if you take a close look at the illustration. Kinsley.
That's right, Kirian. Now, the lead story for the Nation newspaper is also on the president's broadcast last night. And it comes with a kicker. Subsidy pain, Tinubu rolls out relief package. 2 riders, president outlines measures to lift economy, Ogbe, and others hail presidential plan. On the left-hand side there, you see that's a sidebar. It's highlights of the president broadcasts, and the full text of the president's address is also published in the paper. Now, above the nameplate of the Nation, it's time to deliver, President tells service chiefs. Labour insists on protest despite ongoing talks with government. Looting in Yola, police parade 110 arrested suspects. And then there's a highlight of the drama of the ministerial screening, day 1. That's on page 7. President travels to Benin Republic, page 6. And on page 25, police ban tinted vehicle glasses in Borno. Chukudi.
Thank you, Kingsley. Let me dwell, on this region before coming to the president's broadcast. Niger coup, ECOWAS sanctions jeopardize $13 billion Trans-Saharan gas pipeline project. And I say, all the same, keep the pressure on. Those military adventurers must be shown the way out. The next thing you get to hear is, they would embark on damming the river Niger somewhere along its course over Niger, and that would deny us enough water to turn the water turbines. I still say, keep the pressure on. Those boys, I call them boys, must be shown the way out. And so the president has spoken. He expressed a hard fact yesterday when he said there is no alternative to the hardship from subsidy removal. We all tend to agree with this. That actually accounted for the goodwill, good faith, even the silent prayers that went from the generality of the citizens, to the new administration. But it's not safe shores yet. The Nigerian ship is still in turbulent waters, Nigerians should keep demonstrating empathy with the government. What perhaps needs to be said is that perceivable action should be seen accompanying discussions with labor. Very important. There should be no room for speculation about how serious any of the parties to the negotiations, is. But going back to the president's broadcast, let's note that the 400 billion naira intervention for manufacturing, MSMEs, agri sectors really come as very important things to note. You see, whatever you do to an economy, the real sector means a lot to the people. Where you talk about farming activities, how cotton gets rolled, and then, you see perceivable things that people can get from their economic activities. So money going into MSMEs, very important. Economists will keep on telling you that the multinationals can only employ a very meager percentage of the employable population. It's actually MSMEs that drive an economy. Small holdings here and there. Go to Singapore. Go to these Asian tigers. It's small holdings. Some you even call them wayside or whatever. But when you think of the quantum of the people they employ at the end of the day, you find out they are really the people that drive the economy. The Nigeria's informal sector, for instance, it's a heavy driver of our economy. Forget that they are not into official data. They are not part of our official data, but they're working silently there, the informal sector. So whatever government does, they should actually make sure that MSMEs, the agri sector, manufacturing. I like the emphasis that was given to these areas. But Labour still says they will go on strike. Well, some digging in is expected. At the end of the day, what we want is an agreement that comes out, and nobody comes out of this kind of situation fully satisfied in terms of the demands they are putting forward. You meet me halfway, I meet you halfway. Humanity keeps going. That's the way I look at this situation, gentlemen.
Well, I thought you will have something to start with, because all the points you've made and you've raised are all very pertinent. But I'm more concerned really about the coup d'etat aspect of your analysis. Yes, a coup d'etat, of course, is an aberration that shouldn't happen. But again, historically speaking, most of the countries we know today, including America, were at a point in time led by the military. That's not a justification for a coup. But when you are addressing a problem without addressing the causes of that problem, then you have not just started. That is why coups have persisted in countries where people don't have enough patience, to wait. There are many things that are called. I listened to some of the, some Nigerians, I watched them on international, TV stations, express themselves on the streets of Niger. Responsible people, the downtrodden, the celebration. So how do you explain that? You don't have to support it, but then, you see, people who feels it knows it. There are no two ways about it. For instance now, recall what happened in some countries. A leader will, after having 2 tenures, will go and begin to backhand the constitution to get a 3rd term. Why? And most cases, they succeed in doing that and suppress the opposition, take them to jail. And they want people to remain docile forever. It doesn't happen anywhere in the world. At a point, it has to explode. It's only a matter of time. So that's why we say, look, do the correct things from the beginning, ab initio. Do the correct thing. If you have 2 tenures, bow out after that. Respectfully bow out. And you want to stop young men whose children's life are in jeopardy because of ostentatious life of leaders across Africa. You cannot work forever. I'm not saying people should start queues or whatever it is, but let's deal with the causes of the one man was making a point. He said, look, if you stop doing those things, nobody even cares. Just deliver dividends of democracy. Nobody cares.
God bless you. Thank you, Kirian. Human beings would always find excuse to engage in self-serving overtures. That's the way human beings are. What I keep saying, apart from Rawlings, after killing 5 heads of state, the gains in Ghana and all that, I don't think Ghana at the moment is one of the best economies on the African continent. So the question I ask is this: what benefit is derivable from any military intervention we've seen in Africa? So the fact that civilian administrations goof here and there, let us keep making the mistake and let them keep getting corrected by the potential voter force. It is not people who are carrying guns to we didn't vote you in. We must not for one moment give the impression that these people could grab any amount of legitimacy. And you talked about the people who were trooping out there. It's all a rented crowd. Those are the people that support the military. Who was it yesterday on the program? I didn't leave immediately. You held me enthralled. Ambassador Musa somebody analyzed yesterday. the situation. It was compelling.
Yes, Chukudi, I believe you're old enough.
You remember the man I'm talking about?
Look,
the Coas man.
See,
I was on set.
You were on set.
I believe you're old enough to know when we had queues in Nigeria. The celebration that follows it. Nobody hires nobody. It's spontaneous celebration.
So what?
Listen. When you say what you gain,
yes.
Why did you cause the wahala? You caused the wahala, and mother asked me what you're going to gain from a trouble you deliberately created. That is the point now, because you cannot hold human beings down for too long a time. Everything has a limit. You can't be making a mistake for 60 years, mistake for 50 years. What kind of mistake is that? It's a deliberate mistake. Therefore, negativity begets negativity. That's just the point. Let us begin to govern properly. Governance should be paid attention to, not to ostentatious living, riding in cars worth hundreds of millions of naira, bulletproof cars and all of that, and people are dying in poverty. How could you explain that to people who are not patient enough to wait? That is the point. That is the world we are in. Negativity. That's the way.
Let me leave Kingsley to weigh in.
Well, we are having as a conversation segment an examination of the president's broadcast to the nation last night on the economic reform. So, but I just want to draw attention to one or two points arising from that broadcast, or issue that I think that will need to consider going forward. But I have another issue that I will raise that is not on the front pages of the papers, and that is as follows. The president said last night that the country has, within 2 months, saved nearly 1 trillion naira. And the highlights of the measures that the president has reeled out. The president has spoken as president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Well, what we always knew was that subsidy was contributory by local governments, state governments, and the federal government. Now we have saved 1 trillion naira. How much of it belongs to the federal government? How much of it will belong to the states? And then will belong to the local governments? I'm raising this so that the measures that the president has said now, significant, important, far-reaching, do not then become a substitute for correlative action at the subnational levels. You cannot be saving as a local government here. You cannot be saving as state government. A few state governments have done a few things here and there. It's also talked about infrastructure development fund to boost rural road infrastructure for the evacuation of agricultural produce and so on and so forth. So how much are the subnational entities saving so that that tier of government or those tiers of government can be held accountable for the utilization of the savings from the subsidy withdrawal? Mm-hmm. So that is one point. The other point, which is not related to this one, last week something significant happened in Lagos. It was a dual event, and Air Peace was at the center of it all as part of his corporate social responsibility. Members of the Green Eagles, that's the Nigerian soccer team, that didn't take part in the 1976 Montreal Olympics, were honored. And I thought that was a heartwarming event. Chief Shegun Odegbami was around, Emmanuel Okala was there, Dokia Masemeka was there. I'm not sure I got Christian Chukwu's name, but I saw Silvanus Okala. Even those of them who were not there, but great Nigerian heroes, who had taken part. It was a great soccer team we had in 1976, and then we boycotted it on account of the Nigerian government's position on apartheid. But this is my concern. From the various reports, I wasn't at the events. I would imagine that it would be a grave omission if some other names were not added to the wall of fame with the names of the persons written in gold. Why do I say this? The soccer team of 1976 did not of its own accord boycott the Olympics. It was a decision of the Nigerian government, and of course, through the NOC, that's the Nigerian Olympic Committee. General Obasanjo was head of state at the time. It was part of our apartheid policy. But one gentleman, we all remember, he used to be called Anti-Apartheid Abraham Odia.
Yes.
He was president of the Supreme Council of Sports in Africa.
Abraham Odia.
The AAA Odia. If his name, I'm just saying this, because I've not, in the reports, I've not seen his name. If his name is not there, I think it will be a grave omission. Yes. Because he waged that war against apartheid, And I mean, AAA, anti-apartheid Abraham Odia, very well known. He passed away, unfortunately, in 1995. May his soul continue to rest in peace. A daughter, one beautiful daughter of his, a very well-known lady, Marles Allen. I hope she's still around the country. But these are, I hope that we didn't make that omission.
Abraham Odia. Yes. If we miss it, it wouldn't be a grave omission. It would be sacrilege.
Chukudi, thank you for being around today.
Thank you.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be dealing with the president's broadcast and issues, of course, that pertain to you and all others who are concerned about the economic fortunes of our country. You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria. We are live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, broadcasting from our Abuja headquarters studios. Now, to set the stage for our conversation, which is an evaluation of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's broadcast last night, we'll take this background and put together by our correspondent, Adeni Taiwo.
Even when it attracts a bit of inconveniences, ending the fuel subsidy and preferential multiple foreign exchange rates is part of a well-thought-out fight to save the nation from imbalances that had plagued the economy.
The whims of the...
This much, President Bola Tinubu would want Nigerians to know and appreciate as he seeks their understanding in this trying time.
I understand the hardship you face. I wish there were other ways, but there is not. If there were, I would have taken that route as I came here to help, not to hurt the people and the nation that I love so dearly. What I can offer and immediate is to reduce the burden of current economic situation, which has imposed on all of us, most especially on businesses, the working class, and most vulnerable among us.
Along with subnational government, the federal government, the president says, is working to implement interventions that will cushion the pains of Nigerians across socioeconomic brackets. 4 executive orders signed by the president will provide needed incentives for the manufacturing sector and offer a boost for the micro, small and medium-sized enterprises.
We are going to energize this important sector with 125 billion. Out of the sum, we will spend 50 billion conditional grant to 1 million nano businesses between now and March 24. Our target is to give a minimum of 50,000 each to 1,300 nano businesses owners in each of the 774 local governments across the country. In like manner, we will fund 100,000 MSMEs and startups with 75 billion. Under this scheme, each enterprise promoter will be able to get between 500,000 and 1 million at the maximum 9% interest per annum. To further ensure that food prices and the items remain affordable, we have had a multi-stakeholder engagement with various farmers and associations and the operators within the agricultural value chain. In short and in immediate terms, we will ensure stable food are available and affordable. To this end, I have ordered release of 200,000 metric tons of grains from strategic reserves to households across the 36 states and FCT to moderate prices. We are also providing 225,000 metric tons of fertilizer and other inputs to farmers who are committed to our food security agenda.
And to workers, he has this to say.
Your salary review is coming. Once we agree on the minimum wage and general upward review, we will make budget provision for it for immediate implementation.
He assured Nigerians that the country will soon exit the darkness to enter a new and glorious dawn.
All right, thank you there, Taiwo, for the background. We appreciate that. And to discuss President Tinubu's broadcast on reforms, first let me introduce in our studio here in Abuja, Dr. Emeka Okengu. Dr. Okengu is a development economist. He's also a regular face on our show. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, Nigerians.
All right, we also have another regular analyst here. Honorable Ahmed Sajo, former Commissioner for Information and Strategy, Adamawa State.
Yeah,
Always a pleasure to
thank
have
you very much. Thank you.
All right, and then another regular, in fact, all our 4 guests today are regulars on Good Morning Nigeria. We have Ayo Oyalowo, is a political economist. So Ayo, we're glad to have you this morning.
Thank you. Good morning, and good morning, Nigeria.
And with us from our Kaduna Network Center, Yushua Ango, Professor of Finance and Entrepreneurship. Professor Yushua Ango at Kaduna State University, we're glad to have you this morning.
Pleasure, Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
Okay, gentlemen.
Kirian, I think we'll kick off with Professor Yushua Ango. Yes.
Okay.
Kaduna.
All right, Professor.
Kirian, yes.
Yeah, Professor. We watched President Tinubu yesterday evening, dishing out a litany of issues to be addressed on account of the biting economic situation in the country at the moment. Some say it's a total package, and Nigerians are beginning to dissect some of the items that he enumerated, and he also tried to analyze. Let's have your own view of what he was saying yesterday. Is there anything new to you that he has inculcated in what he presented to Nigerians yesterday?
Out from Mr. President's speech was the style, even the style itself, because he said he wanted to talk to us on a plain basis. He wanted to come straight, and I believe he came across and communicated properly. He clearly indicated that he understands the pains that we are going through, and that measures taken were necessary and that they needed to have been taken. If there were any other way, it would have been done, the other way. Now, he came out with palliatives, at least the fact that we have made savings, which is very obvious. We used to spend about 400 billion on subsidy monthly. Unfortunately, even part of that we needed to borrow, basically because when we are running a deficit budget, it means we are borrowing, to do that. So that is no longer the case. We have seen evidence of that, certainly in the last Federation account allocation meeting and the amounts that have been distributed to all tiers of government. Now, what came out and what made significant impact, or what I hope will make significant impact, is the fact that attempts have been made, to intervene at various levels. If you take the industrial side, the major manufacturing firms, we're talking about 75 billion. We're talking about micro, small, and medium enterprises, another 75. We're talking about nano sector. We're looking at 1,300. Such in every local government at 50,000. So basically, there was an attempt, to reach out to all levels of the productive economy. Then on the other side, the release of national grain reserves, that was also significant. We are talking about 200,000 metric tons, and then the promise also to release about the same quantum of fertilizers to farmers. Of course, that has its own issues, but maybe we'll look at it subsequently. But then, what I mean by that is that the season is almost over, and as far as fertilizers are concerned, but then nonetheless, since these interventions will come, and depending, of course, on how they are structured and what systems are put in place so that we do not create another set of beneficiaries who, I mean, when we had the subsidy, those who earn or who were pocketing the, as Mr. President said, those who had deep pockets, who are pocketing the subsidies, we should not have deep pockets of those who are also pocketing these palliatives that have been brought out, for the benefit of the society. So all of these, I believe, will make some impact, and I hope, in the same vein, because when we're looking at 125 billion, for example, between nano, micro, small, and medium enterprises, that is huge. But when we're looking at 75 billion, to 75 major enterprise, that is also big, but side by side with this, everybody, we have been making this call, everybody need to actually understand that we are in times, of hard times, and everybody has to actually show empathy. What I mean by this is that government is served at all levels, whether executive or the National Assembly or state assemblies or wherever, should make sure also they show empathy. Their lifestyle, the way they spend money, the way on themselves should be taken into consideration. What we should do, if we realize and we agree in all sincerity that we have these national issues, they should show empathy. And we are all familiar with what has happened. For example, when the request was made for the 500 billion palliatives, what the legislature did was to add their own, and that is not sensitive. So these are the kind of things that we should see. In Kaduna State, for example, I read the governor said, okay, there is no need for new vehicles for commissioners. They should use the old vehicles. That is the kind of empathy we need to see. Everybody should understand that we are passing through these problems. Some people should not just live big, and large, again, at the expense of the society as a whole. So everybody is going to suffer, but if we know that everybody is in it and we are all in it together, I believe it will be better and we'll understand it and we'll appreciate it even more.
Thank you very much, Professor Yusha Ango, there for your opening intervention. I will come to the studios now. Dr. Emeka Okengu, President addressed Nigerians last night. What are your thoughts?
Well, thank you. Well written, well scripted. He communicated well. It was good that he said, I'm going to be speaking to you directly. I want us to talk. This was how he came across. But when you look at the speech and the provisions a little bit more deeply, you might start seeing what I might consider, in my view, some very critical factors that were either taken as given, okay, or was not captured clearly. If for every pronouncement that was made against expenditure, what you saw was a loan that needed to be paid back. And the moment you start talking about capital injection, there has to be a business plan that can be able to make certain that that money is recovered. And you find out that even the 50,000 that was supposed to be given to the nano people, to the single businesses, is also not coming as a grant, it's coming as a loan. So when you look at that total package, now you begin to now ask this very simple question. Is this figures driven against well thought out business development programs that now have back ends that can be able to support it? I'll give you a typical example. When we're talking about supporting maybe 1,000 nano traders with 50,000, the assumption is that that 50,000 is supposed to help them to increase their hardwares or whatever it is they're selling. Now, where are they going to be buying? What will be the cost of procurement? What will be the cost of sales? Are there going to be taxes against this? Are these products available? That's one. Two, if you said that you're going to be establishing or supporting 75 midstream industries with ₦1 billion each at the rate of 9%, another question will be, what would they be producing? What would they be manufacturing? What would be supporting that program? Where would they be getting the raw materials from? Good program, but I think the president has made his wish known, his dreams, people can see that he actually empathizes. But I think in walking the talk, this is where probably the government issues, and again, maybe on a last note, we don't know, is this program going to be run through the MDAs, or are we going to be having presidential committees? Are we going to be having special purpose vehicles, to be able to run it? We know that the financial institutions are going to be involved, but what about the governing structures? How are we going to be? Who are going to be the implementing agencies? We talked about the production of 150, producing rice on 150,000 hectares of land. I didn't also hear about the cost of land clearing. Because I'm involved in this, you find out that it will take almost a quarter of the money, the total money announced by Mr. President, to be able to clear 500,000 hectares of land. In fact, maybe more.
You said 150,000.
No, 500,000, because the whole land to be cleared is 500,000. And then you're allocating 150,000 to rice, I think, and now 150,000 to cowpea, and then the other ones to cassava and wheat.
Dr. Kongo, thanks. Let me just read out the highlights so you can take that along with in your analysis. It says 50 billion naira each to cultivate 150,000 hectares of rice and maize. And then 50 billion naira for cultivation of 100,000 hectares of wheat and cassava. So your total here will be 250,000 hectares cultivating cassava, wheat, rice, and maize, and 50 billion naira each, totaling therefore 100 billion for the cultivation of these four crops.
He also mentioned in that speech that he was committed to the cultivation and clearing of 500,000 hectares of land. It is in the speech. Now, right. These are the things that are allocated to wheat, because I'm involved in the cassava value chain and we're doing a lot of land clearing now, so I can tell you for free that it will almost consume all the whole money if you started talking only about land clearing. And remember that we're not just talking about land clearing, you're talking about land preparation. When you finish clearing the land, you will need to prepare. We are talking about, now the fertilizers and the insecticides and the herbicides and all the other things you need. Now, for me, I would have been more comfortable if the president had announced that he had, or the government wanted to put in maybe 500 billion, into building an anchor economy around these three groups of people that I have mentioned. First, the nano people, second, the midstream, and then third, being able for us to now build some accelerated program that can support, the people who are suffering. In so doing, Kingsley, three things that have come into mind. The first thing that will come into mind is who is writing this business plan. Now, in writing your business plan, the first consideration will be where are you getting your seedlings, and are they tied to the soils of these 500,000? The second consideration will be when you cultivate, are you also taking into consideration that there has to be perimeter fences around these lands, because you have 24 million cattle walking around freely. And we've seen pictures, cases where people finish farming and these cattle don't give you an announcement. I mean, you come in the morning and you see nothing. The third consideration, are we placing these things against our floodplains? Because a lot of the farm lines in Nigeria, we lost about 20 or 30% of all the products, farmed around the country to floods. Now, have you also taken into consideration in marking out these 500,000 hectares of land, this issue of perennial floods, flash floods, and all these other natural disasters? So these are the issues. I mean, this is why I think all of us are here in my conclusion, it's a good program, it's well intended. It shows that it's a president who's listening, who knows that the people are suffering, and in a lot of ways should be commended.
Yeah, Dr. Kegu, I think you have hit the nail. Actually, you have entered the nitty-gritty of this conversation. We're still going to get there further, as we engage other guests. What you have said, all but that's on implementation. That's just the summary of it all. Now let's bring in Ahmad Sajo. Ahmad Sajo, I think I read what you wrote on the internet, if I'm right, and of course I had the view that you have, put across with respect to the government, the president's address yesterday. Now, how do you make sense of it all?
Well, let me start by saying that yesterday when I watched the president, one thing was very clear. He intended to communicate with Nigerians, and he communicated with Nigerians. Even from the second paragraph, when he said he was not going to entertain, heavy economic jargons that can confuse even those of us that are educated, not to talk about uneducated people. He was plain, and he was actually plain. Secondly, what I observed was that the president was sufficiently concerned. He communicated his concerns. His body language was not this kind of "I am the overlord." It was really, he was concerned. And thirdly, what I like about the address was that he gave timelines. Anything he says, we will do between this period and this period. So we have a timeline within which to observe and see if there would be results. I saw the figures that have been reeled out. I can understand the misgivings because, like my brother here said, if you do not have a business plan and you go out to inject money into businesses, you are actually injecting money into something that is not well thought out, and you may have a problem. But I think the president, we have to give him the benefit of doubt. Most likely that there are plans also on ground to address some of those concerns. My worry in all of it is that the president seems to believe that all the state governments and the local government leadership share in his, vision and patriotism, to see Nigeria get out of the woods. From what we are seeing, from the feelers in the states, not all the states are actually, working towards making things better for the people. And not only the states, like Professor Yushau said, even the other stratas of leadership, the National Assembly leadership, the State Assembly leadership, other, if even appointees, if you look at, the mindset is still the old mindset. The mindset of, look, this sense of entitlement, I have arrived, this is my turn, this is our time. We must also toe the same line. And I am also worried that, when it comes to destroying this country, when it comes to building this country or destroying this country, we're not coming together the way we should come. When it comes to building, we don't come together. But when it comes to destroying, it looks like we are all the same. When I see issues that have to do with benefits and entitlements put on the floor of either the National Assembly or the State Assembly, and I don't see whether members of opposition parties saying, look, this was not what we campaigned on, that kind of a thing. So there is a unanimity in the understanding that things that benefit the ruling elite, which now the president has defined as elite of the elite. So we have categories of elites, that have kind of agreed to come together and draw a lot of entitlement from the system. So this is where I'm worried.
Nano elite.
This is where I'm getting worried. Why I'm getting worried is that, look, my brother, who are those that are going to implement those programs? What is their mindset? Do they think the way the president is thinking, that let's move the country forward, let's get out of this wood? Because the main message in the president's speech was that, look, we are in hard times, but hey, Nigerians, listen to me. The darkest part of the night is just before dawn. We will get over it, and we will get to a new dawn. Agreed. But the implementing vehicles, are they going to have the same mindset, or are they going to have a different mindset? So I must commend the president. The speech was he actually communicated. The intentions are very laudable. Everything that we have heard yesterday are things that we should have heard. Of course, I know that my friends within Labour would have wanted much more than a promise to review their wages. They were hoping for probably an announcement as to the fact that we would send a bill to the National Assembly to review the minimum wage to so and so. But I believe that too will come at the appropriate time. But this is where we are now. And I tell you, Kingsley, if the president puts a monitoring and evaluation mechanism that is robust, that will make sure that implementers do not sabotage the process, we may get the results we want within the timelines that he has given. But because he has given us a timeline, by March 2024, if none of these things begin to yield results, you know, we would have known that, look, there were errors in either planning or implementation.
Amasajo, thank you very much there for reminding us of the key issues and the implementation challenges, and particularly drawing attention again to the coterie of nano-elite that the president referred to in his broadcast as elite of the elite. That is, as Nigerians would say, inner caucus or something of that nature. But this is serious business. Ayo, what are your thoughts on the president's broadcast?
It's good to be the last speaker because you can now see what everybody is thinking and you're able to aggregate. However, I put some things here on them. First and foremost, yes, it's a breath of fresh air in the way he communicated yesterday. I mean, there were no ambiguities in his speech. It was clear he really wanted, I think, like Ahmed Sajo said, he was honestly feeling what Nigerians are feeling and he wants to communicate that. But like he also said, the challenge is, who are those people that will be selected to implement? Would they be thinking like that? I know everybody is pretty angry about the National Assembly, the way they were arranging palliatives for themselves as soon as they came in, but that is where we were. But this is where we are now. I think it's in this studio or somewhere else where I was. I was vociferously advocating for the CNG to be used for vehicles, especially for commercial vehicles, and I think that is part of what the president said about 3,000 units of CNG fueled buses. And for me, I think this is what everybody should be considering in terms of mass transit. We have to find a way of de-emphasizing this petrol, because subsidy has been taken away from kerosene, from diesel and from cooking gas, and it never creates this kind of uproar. That means our over-dependence on petrol is now proving like an albatross to us. So it is good that he's talking about the CNG buses. I know I have made a lot of advocacy for that, because for me that is the only way out of this unnecessary quagmire. And the last administration tried to do something about it, but unfortunately it looks like he just said again, maybe plenty of plan, plenty of good intention, but lack of the drive to actually make it happen. I know a few people were contacted to change their vehicles, but now we need to take it very seriously, because if we're able to solve the issue of mass transit, it will automatically reduce the pain on Nigerians. Because many of us that want to do big men, we can continue to do big man and drive expensive cars, drive with petrol, but the real people in Nigeria should be given the opportunity to travel from one point to another without having to kill themselves paying through their noses. I mean, most of the big men in quote that we have here, when you go to London, you find yourself in the same buses with them, in the same trains with them. So I think we need to work on that area, ensure that the mass transit system is as effective and efficient as it can be. And this will now dovetail down to the states, because clearly the federal government cannot do beyond Abuja in terms of mass transit, for instance. Each state government, I saw the Lagos state governor yesterday was saying they are going to slash, I think from today, they will slash bus, from tomorrow by 50%. Very commendable. And if other states begin to think along this line, the guest in Kaduna also talked about the governor saying you won't have to buy new vehicles for commissioners, let them use the old ones. These are ways we need to begin to see our state government thinking, because it is clear that the federal government is trying to lead, but if the state is refusing to lead, to follow that lead, then whatever the president is saying or planning to do will come to naught. Because, for instance, when the FARC allocation is done, is about to be shared, everybody gets his own share. So why do we always exonerate our state government from actually doing what they need to do? And they are the ones, like, for instance, Doctor was talking about clearing land and all, and I was thinking, this is not the job of federal government, really. Because federal government do not even own any land. States own all the land. So we must bring the state government into this equation. And if we are not thinking that way, then we have to start thinking that way, because clearly our governors have been given too much latitude to hide behind the federal government is failing, to do nothing. So we must hold the the state and the local government to account. Clearly, in this game, we're all in it together. If the states do not do their own bit, it doesn't matter what the president has as intention, we will all continue to cry. So in my opinion, the president has communicated effectively. Minimum wage, I hope that this minimum wage story will come to an end within the next couple of days, because we need to change that narrative. 30,000 naira as minimum wage, as far as I'm concerned, is not a minimum wage. It is a killer wage. We need to change that narrative. And he said they are discussing it. I hope Labour cooperate with the government, and I hope government also cooperate with Labour, so that we can reach a consensus. I'm looking at a minimum wage of, I don't want to give anybody any idea so that I don't create problem, but I'm looking at an upward review of minimum wage that will truly be a living wage, that will be something that you say, okay, this works with the current time that we're in. 30,000 naira cannot work. So for me, the president has tried, he has said the right things, but who are the implementers, and what are our subnationals, that's the state and local government, going to do about it? For me, the buck stops there.
Well, yes, well spoken. Your last lines reminded me of, during the last administration, when you go to the east, for instance, where I come from, and someone will tell you, Buhari did this, Buhari did that. I said, look, what about your state governor? What about your state? And these are people who are singing songs for their governors. And 2 days before the governors left office, they were now telling the different story altogether. Yet we were with him for 8 years. That's part of what we're talking about. And my colleague Kingsley raised that during our conversation on newspaper review, to say what is the engagement of the local government area or the state or subnationals, as you call them. Because if they don't key in, then whatever measure or policy the federal government has will not trickle down to the larger number of Nigerians in this country. We're bringing you in again, the man who spoke first, Yusua Ango, Professor of Finance and Entrepreneurship. You've listened to other guests, and I want you to put all their contributions into context. And I want to remind you that Dr. King, we talked about business plan, Sergio, mentality of implementing vehicles, and Oyalo also talked about the mass transit system, and again, the implementers. Now, to you, what should be the role of the subnationals in this process? Because the president has spoken, and Nigerians can feel that he really wants to address these very, should I say, perennial issues. We've lived with them for over 60 years now. What are your considerations to say, look, this is the way forward?
As far as palliatives are concerned, the role of the subnationals is even much more than what the federal government needs to do. The local government is much closer, naturally, to everybody. And then, of course, the state government before you reach the national level. So, of course, at national level, you make certain policies and pronouncements. We expect the state governments to come in and the local governments to do a lot more. You see, we have a system which is clear to everybody, that we have a federation account system whereby whatever is generated is shared, and whatever the federal government saved, like Kingsley said earlier in the discussion, whatever is generated or saved, part of it will go to state governments, part of it will go to federal government, to local governments. Now, we know in the last few years, each time federal government makes a policy, especially pertaining to wages, you find that some state governments will come out and say, we don't have money. I don't think this should be the case now, because everybody now has a lot more money, obviously. than they bargained for or what they hoped for, because they are getting two major things have happened. One, because there is no subsidy, that money is saved. Then two, the fact that the exchange rates have been merged somewhat, instead of 460 or thereabout that they were selling, they are now selling at about 800. So that quantum of money that has almost doubled is coming down the same way to state governments as it was as it is to local governments. So each of them we expect to be able to do better, and we expect also when it comes to this issue of minimum wage, each state government, each local government will also go along. We know that is, because sometimes state governments will say, oh, federal government agreed on this, even though, of course, when it comes to the matter of wage and a decision has been made by the National Assembly, it's a matter that applies to all. But sometimes, up to today, even this 30,000 you are saying, some states are not paying it, so nobody should come and give excuse, because everybody, from the highest tier to the lowest, everyone is getting a lot more money than they had bargained for. Now, on the issue of especially the mass transit system, in fact, that is the one that the average Nigerian will feel most, because, coming here early in the morning, I noticed that most people were actually walking. They are people that normally will take a ride, on some vehicle or something like that, are walking, to wherever they are going to work. So that means, of course, it has its own benefit. But then what we need is this issue of intervention pertaining to mass transit. Now, we're talking about 3,000 vehicles. I believe the state governments will come up with their own vehicles also. And he's talking about 20-seater buses. And what I just need to add is that in addition to the fact that they are going to be fueled with CNG, I think we should also try as much as possible, if we can do this or get these buses from this country, and we know there are some bus manufacturers in Nigeria, we should patronize Nigeria so that there will be the added benefit of retaining the money within the country. So many benefits are going to come, but then we need to ensure that part of it is that as much as possible some of these funds within the country. Now, talking about business plans and things like that, I believe, I hope, my belief is that since the president has made the pronouncement, underneath, somewhere behind the scene, a lot of arrangements are being made. What I would just want to suggest is whatever we are going to propose, let us propose a system that will not, like I said earlier, create people with deep pockets who will now take advantage of what is supposed to go down, the palliatives, the fertilizer that's supposed to go to farmers. Make sure that it reaches the farmers. Let's make sure that when we're talking about giving out loans, to micro, small, and medium enterprises, or we're giving out to the nano business people, especially, that one is supposed to be, it's a conditional grant, correcting the second speaker, is not a loan from my understanding. It's a conditional grant, only that you need to meet certain conditions before you get it. Now, whatever it is, let the arrangement be done in such a way that, we make sure we're not creating some people who are taking advantage of the arrangement. Another thing we need to do, and to ensure we do, is to ensure that this thing is spread all across the country. We don't want a situation whereby intervention is done 75 billion to 75 major manufacturers, and 40, 50, 60% goes to one state as against other states of the federation. We want to, encourage, we want to suggest that the same way that we said we are going to do the nano intervention, grant, to 774 local governments, 1,300 individuals or businesses, then the same way this 75 billion that is going to be distributed to 75 major manufacturers, please pick them from across all over Nigeria, and the same thing with the micro, small, and medium enterprises. That is the way that it should be done. Any leakages, the policymakers should make sure that they block any leakages, and they avoid a situation whereby we're leaving a problem, we're not creating another problem altogether. We should not allow anybody to take advantage. I know the president said they are talking to the farmer associations and all that. Even those farmer groups, because I'm a farmer myself, I've always said it, but even those farmer groups, we have to hold them, to account. We have to have a system that ensure that they actually bring out these things, not that they take advantage of the farmers, and talk on behalf of farmers, meanwhile pocketing whatever benefits that are supposed to go to farmers to their own pockets.
All right, Professor Yushau Ango, thank you very much there for the points that you have raised. Now, there are, from the latest round of contributions, two issues on the table, in my view. One has to do with implementation framework for the measures outlined by the president. Implementation framework, which also ties in with the other issue. Is this a program of the Federal Republic of Nigeria or a program of the federal government? In other words, what would be the ancillary, if not complementary role of subnational entities? Ayo, you were talking about just now, say, look, land preparation, for instance, as Okengu drew our attention to. Whose responsibility is it? Is it federal government to go and be hiring tractors? I know there's something called NALDA. We had the executive, the person in charge here. They set up some demonstration projects. Are they also going to be involved in this? So is this a federal government plan that will run parallel to state government and local government plans? Or how do you see it? Let's begin with Okengu.
Okay, thank you. I think the first thing we need to do is to look at the gaps. Okay, the first gap is what you call data. And if you look at every program that seems to have crashed, it's crashed because of the absence of this data.
Reliable data.
Data. Against the ones that seem to have gotten some headway. I'll give a very simple example with what you call the single register, which was a program of the World Bank. I was the consultant for Kogi State for YESO. The first thing the World Bank did was to start generating data on people that were classified as the most vulnerable, and then started now getting consultants, and getting states to buy into it, and that was how they started doing the conditional, cash transfers. So monies were given, against appropriate identification, and then those people who were getting it needed to get bank accounts. And in one of the reviews I made, I raised an issue, to say, for whoever has gotten a university degree cannot be classified in any which way, even if he's unemployed, as vulnerable. And you had a lot of people getting into this, register. And then because the way people were being mined or mapped to get into that register was a little bit faulty. My brother, I think you raised the story about the CNG. As consultant to the Nigerian Air Force Holdings about 10 years ago, we had actually gone to the NMPC to do a presentation on CNG, on the use of change. I'm talking about 10 years ago. And part of the challenges you're going to be having with this CNG is your refueling process. Okay, it is one thing for you to get those buses, is another thing for those buses to be running, at full value. And running at full value requires two things. One, maintenance infrastructure, and two, the fueling. Right now in Nigeria, I stand to be corrected. I don't think we have up to 3,000 points. I don't even think we have up to 500 points. Way back when I was talking about, we only had 2 points. But with a country that has as much non-associated gas as you have associated gas, a lot of these gas fields are capped in Adamawa, where my brother comes from, where my wife comes from, in Doma, in Nasarawa, in Kogi, you have in Bauchi, you have a lot of this non-associated gas, that has been drilled and capped. So when you want to do a program, and this is why I keep going back to, if you want to call it a business plan, if you want to call it a feasibility, the first thing we should have done with this program is to do what you call a technical audit. And this will bring you to the carrying capacity of, government at whatever levels. It is one thing to say state government clear land. Now, for you to buy a tractor or a bulldozer and earth mover, right now will be costing you between 150 million to 200 million to get one. Now, it is not even buying it that is the issue. It is now the cost of fueling it. Because a full tank of a bulldozer, a D8, would take about maybe 150 to 200 liters of diesel. Diesel is at 900, 800, per liter. Oga Kingsley, you run it for 8 hours and you will need to refill. If you're lucky to run it for 8 hours, because what happens at the moment you leave that place, somebody calls to say the fuel hose has broken and they have lost half of a tank of diesel. What do? They lose your hose, remove your diesel, break a pipe, and then say to you, and they are sure you are in a place where you can't start coming back to that site immediately. So these are all.
You hold the supervisor responsible.
Well, the supervisor is part of it, because supervisor knows that he needs that money.
Him.
And the other one you get is worse.
Yeah, you also fire him.
So, Oga Kingsley, I think what is required is for us to be able to look at the president's wish list. For me, I would rather, if I was asked as a development person, to say, let us see this as capital injection to be able to now create an anchor economy around the 4 areas that he's talked about, and then begin to now identify and look at the demands. 3,000 buses, yes. To transporters, yes. Okay, now, for you to get this loan at 9% to buy these buses, you will need to show us a repayment plan by showing us a route. And in showing us that route, you need to show us your capacity to be able to maintain, to be able to fuel, okay? Now, to be able to now, operate it. That's one. 2, we talk about the cassava value chain, which I'm very heavily involved in now. As of yesterday, the team was in Adamawa. We found out that cassava can create an economy that can take a minimum of 50 million people, because cassava grows everywhere in Nigeria and has more than 10 value outputs, okay, leading up to even what you call the bioethanol, okay, that can also help us in our energy mix. Now, the point I'm trying to make, so I don't take a lot of this conversation, is that at this stage now, I do not think that we should operate these programs in silos. I think that the first thing we need to begin to do is that if you're talking about empowering 1,300 people in each local government that has a population of between 5 million or 2 million people, you'll be looking like using I don't know what Yorubas call it, this big pot they use in cooking a party jollof to be able to cook a pot of rice. Chances are that you might lose your 1 cup and then your pot might even melt. Okay? Now, point I'm trying to make is that if we're saying that this is proof of concept, okay, there should be a definite program where we are getting 10 million people in the next 5-6 years to have now benefited from this, where we're now exiting these nano people to get to a point where they become cooperatives. But it will be based, sir, and this is my last point, on your capacity to be able to aggregate volume. If you want the nano people to spread, there has to be a point where they are picking their goods, be it oranges, be it mangoes, be it gari, be it fruit, be it vegetables. At one time in my center in Kuje, okay, what I was doing was that I had them growing ugu. And a lot of these women will come from town, come into the farm, pick up the ugu and come to sell. So it became some kind of aggregation point. And at some other time, I also got farmers around that Kuje area to start making molds. And I was providing them with yam seedlings. So if this is what it is you have in mind, remembering that the person who is carrying that cassava is not conjuring it. Okay. He is getting it from somewhere. So what is the source? What do we require? And this is where you will be needing your seedlings against your soil. You'll be needing your seed multiplications. You'll be needing your seed quality. This is where these supervisors you're talking about comes in. Otherwise, you are going to share this money. People are going to have 50,000 naira in their pockets. Call it what the professor in Kaduna called it, conditional grant. If it is a conditional grant, it simply means it has conditions attached to it.
Kyria, you weigh in before we take a break. It appears to me that what Emeka Okengo is saying is this. There's some conceptual divergence between his proposition and the president's intention. The president intends this as palliatives. But Emeka, you are saying that fine, but actually this should be source capital for an anchor economy where you identify the key points, right?
Yes.
Okay, Killian.
Yes, and to go further on that, he has raised the complexities involved, the complex nature of economic management, because you don't just inject money and leave the money to flow. You have to design other measures to ensure that that money does not just go to serve the purpose and of course even come back again for you to reinvest and whatever. That's the business aspect of the conversation. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on NTA Network Service. When we return, I'd like to engage Ahmad Sajo on one particular pertinent aspect of this conversation. Don't go away. All right, so we're glad to have you back again on our show this Tuesday. We are, of course, engaging our guests to dissect President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's address to Nigerians yesterday. And we're also thinking of having a second leg to this conversation. But let's try and finish what we have left today. Ahmad Sajo, I recall what Honorable Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe of blessed memory said some time ago in the early 80s, that Nigeria's major problem is planlessness. We deploy these fireworks, at every point in time. Even when we prepare to play football, when we know that World Cup is every 4 years, we begin to plan our own 6 months before the tournament. And that has affected all the sectors of our national life in terms of implementation. So there's lack of collective responsibility. We're talking about implementation of a very, well-articulated presentation yesterday by our president. The CNG, electric cars, these are alternatives being floated. And again, we're going to think about, Michael King, we talked about, what about running the vehicles, maintaining the vehicles? Are we going to have a new crop of mechanics to deal with that? Because invariably, a car that's running breaks down from time to time, and so on. So what are the plans for perhaps running the CNG? It's not even there in the first place, but we're thinking of procuring them. Now, in terms of procurement, are we going to import them? Are we going to engage locals, who are into either car assembling or production or manufacturing, as the case may be, to do this, so that, of course, we also, enjoy the value chain that is attached to, the moves that he wants to make. I want you to just do this a conjecture. Just look at it. Let's see how.
Let me help you out here.
Yes.
Our problem is actually not planning. We have experts that have laid down. I mean, he was a consultant to a state government, so he's telling you about available data by the World Bank and everything. These are all part of planning processes. Our problem is implementation, and the implementation problems we have to do with the contradictions in our systems. One of the things I enjoyed most in President Tinubu's broadcast yesterday was this admittance by our president that there are, very clear-cut distinctions within our economy, that there is imbalances in our economy. There are imbalances even in our politics. There are imbalances even in our national life, social lives. So we know that there are imbalances. What are we going to do to bridge the gaps created by these imbalances? These are some of the things that we should think about. The president said 1 trillion naira was saved within the last 2 months that the subsidy was removed. This 1 trillion naira had reflected, we saw it reflected in distributions during the last FAC. But what impact has it made onto the people? The states and the local government that collected additional funds, what did they do with it? We're not seeing any impact within society. Look at another major contradiction. We're talking about minimum wage. The people with the highest wage in this country are the NNPC and the central bank. The NNPC even has a 13th month. They receive 13 months in a year. But we have 4 refineries with thousands of NNPC workers working there. For the past 20 or more years, They've been receiving salaries in these refineries. They have been appropriating money for the repair of the refineries, and the refineries are not working. Then Dangote came, and within a period of maybe like 4 years, built a whole new refinery. What exactly is happening? Okay, if small wages are responsible for the lack of productive force within the other working environments, what of where they have a very good wage? Why is their own systems not having any impact on the economy? We have two programs that President Bola Tinubu is addressing. The central bank, the dual exchange rate, because the naira keeps falling every day. Central bank keeps collecting workers keep collecting huge salaries, but they cannot even determine good policies that will safeguard the strength of our naira. So we're looking at all the contradictions. It's not about one aspect. Kirian, if we have an implementation template, and that at the core of that implementation template is that whoever fails should be held accountable. These days, you saw it, you are working here, you know it. You look at the television, you see people sit down in front of the House of Representatives, confess to crimes that they have committed in government. And then after confessing, we sold jobs, or jobs are being sold, we did this is being done. They walk out of that place, go back to their homes and pick a cup of tea and sip, and nothing happens. In other crimes, when you confess to a crime, you are arrested there and then. You are held responsible.
You can't be arrested on the floor of the National Assembly when you step out.
When you step out, yes. Yeah. But the thing is, what I am saying is that even these very laudable programs of the president, once we do not put sanctions on people who make the implementation impossible, we will continue to have what we have. And lastly, and I want to say this, lastly, the president and all of us should be made to realize that government is an enabler. Government is an enabler. Create an enabling environment for the system to function. What we see in Nigeria is that where you have less government, you see more success. Where you have more government, you see more failure. Where are we succeeding? Clearly, you can see where we are succeeding. We're succeeding in the entertainment industry. Music and film, we're all over the world. How much of government is in it? Very little. Where are we failing? The economy is failing. Social services are failing. Why are they failing? We have too much government in them. So if government itself does not enable success, then government is itself failing the people. So we must revert to a government that is an enabler for success, and that whoever is discovered to be part of the problems should be held accountable instanta. It's not like we just sit down and discuss it on the floor of the National Assembly and
so when you say arrest,
held accountable.
Some of the members of the National Assembly have cases at the EFCC. Who will arrest who? How is it going to work?
What I'm saying is that, Kirian, whoever is found wanting should be held accountable. If somebody takes, let me tell you, my brother was raising an issue. If somebody takes the money that is meant to go to some businesses in a state and puts it in his pocket and nothing happens to him, another person will do it again the same day. Another person will do it. And so you will never get it right.
That's what is happening.
Until somebody is held accountable. Yeah. And I believe that the president, as serious as he displayed his countenance yesterday, should be willing to also develop sufficient political will to hold people who fail, the elite of the elite,
no matter who's
who pocketed money. If they pocket this money again, they should not be let to go. And even the elite of the elite who pocketed the past money, the subsidy, I don't think the president should sweep it under the carpet. We should raise it up and find the elite of the elite who pocketed in their pocket, who had fat bank accounts that he mentioned. Those ones should be exposed.
Okay, Ahmed Sajo, thank you very much for the very valuable points that you have raised. I'm sure that many Nigerians, if not most Nigerians, have been scandalized by the claims of job trading by the Federal Character Commission that is ordinarily mandated to ensure that there is equity in appointments in federal establishments in particular. So I'm sure the investigation is still ongoing by the National Assembly. But whatever it is, these are ordinarily tenured appointments. But it's almost imperative for President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to show his displeasure at such allegations, if proven, or if there's any scintilla in it, just get the commissioners fired. That's it, along with every other person else, and then appoint a new set of persons. And of course, the appropriate institutions would then take the matter up from that particular point. I think that's one of the things we were talking about, Ahmed Sajo. Otherwise, the rot will continue. Now, Ayo, you were talking about CNG and the buses that will come. Last week on Good Morning Nigeria, we had a two-part conversation on the conversion of vehicles to auto gas. One of our guests who appeared twice on the program is the national coordinator of the National Gas Expansion Program. Emeka Okengu, you talked about the number of points available for refueling. And the national coordinator, that program now would appear to be in abeyance. There was a lot of push for it under President Buhari, but somehow, again, typical obstacles erected. We had all kinds of lethargy from appropriate MDAs that were supposed to function. It never gained traction. The pilot program started more than 10 years ago. Vehicles in some of the commercial vehicles in part of Edo State have been using gas, auto gas, for their refueling. But the national coordinator reminded us that there are three forms you can actually use to power your vehicles. And CNG is probably more volatile. But our LPG is a low-hanging fruit for us to use for the conversion of these vehicles. LPG, which is our cooking gas, that is propane and butane combined. LPG that you can almost immediately convert, at least, if I remember him, 6,000 filling stations all across the country to be multi-fuel sales outlet, multi-fuel. In other words, there you have LPG, there you have diesel, there you have petrol. You can immediately retrofit those ones before you start thinking of saying, okay, we want to start having, they can use surface tanks for their gases, and then the gas exploitation you talked about will be a long-term project. So we wouldn't know how much of that has been factored into this quest to acquire 3,000 CNG. Now, the point also came out from our conversation last week that one of the critical items needed now for conversion are the kits. Well, RATIA, that is Road Transport Employers Association, was also here. The president actually sat where Emeka Okengu is sitting. That it is the acquisition of the kits. And again, because of the volatility of gas, you have to be sure that you have the original kits. There are different locations where they come from. There's one from Brazil, there's one from Italy, there's one from China. So what is it that government can do? Is it in fast-tracking the sourcing of high quality kits for conversion, even for use of the gensets and so on and so forth? So that's one. I thought I should mention this, that CNG could be a medium-term thing, but low-hanging fruit, according to the national coordinator, will be LPG. You can immediately convert some 6,000 stations across the country into multi-fuel outlets. So I see you were itching to respond to other points that the other guests had equally raised. Yes.
He was talking about not punishing people, and it's just there in my head the nonsense that went on during the anchor borrower program between the CBN and the Nigerian incentive-based risk-sharing self-agricultural lending, the NARSA. I can't remember the amount of billions that was allocated for rice. And as I speak with you, anybody here will agree with me that the price of rice kept going up. So what happened? You remember the former MD of that institution was removed for corruption, but till today he has not been tried by any court of competent jurisdiction. That is part of the problem. When people have been held accountable or have not been held accountable for their crime, then it is always an impetus for somebody else to go and commit more crime. I mean, how can the president say he wants agriculture to be the fulcrum of his administration, and he pushed so much billions, if not trillions, into agriculture through the CBN, and it is proven now that people have stolen so much, and yet not one human being is on trial, let alone in jail. So these are the challenges we have in this country. When people have deliberately abused their position, that man that ran NASA is still running around the street today, still looking for some other opportunities. And these are people that actually handle the anchor borrower programs. And billions was frittered away. In fact, they went to construct one fake rice pyramid. Today, we don't see the rice. So when Sanjo was talking, I was really angry, because people cannot be allowed to steal Nigerian money and then nothing happens. Because like the doctor was saying, when somebody does it, you fire him, another person comes, you fire him. If you don't punish people appropriately for committing crime against the system, honestly, no matter who you hire, it will always be, nothing will happen. So we must get to that point where people are held accountable. The president have laudable programs for Nigeria. All of us in this room, even though if we can say this small issue, every one of us agree that whatever intention he has were excellent intentions. But we are all worried that who are those that will drive this intention? Because his intention remains an intention until you put in the mechanism to drive it. Now, when you put in people who come in there and see it as another job for the boys, then we are always going to keep ourselves in more problem than solution. And Nigerians at this point are not looking for more problems. Nigerians are looking for solution. So the president must not only bring solution, he must, like Sergio said, open that carpet. Whatever is hiding under the carpet that we have swept there before, let us bring it out. When a few people are dealt with according to the law, next set of people who are going there will have their thinking cap on, knowing that if I commit a crime, I will be dealt with.
Well, if he opens the carpet, of course, health will roll.
See, no, should we be afraid of health? Really?
No, I'm not saying, I'm with you, and I'm sure many Nigerians are with you in that. But again, you have to be prepared to dismantle what has been set up, even the National Assembly, if the carpet is open. That is the reality of, that's what the reality of it. And when you begin to now fight the real pillars that you have in a setting, it's not going to work for you. It's just part of the system. The issue of LPG, CNG, electrical, auto gas, I hope we're not late in the day, because we ignored homegrown technology. The technology we're talking about that people are doing today.
The best time to solve
is when one young man decided to start his gen with gas and all of that. People say, is it possible? And so also we ignored homegrown technology. We want to import all of this stuff, and we want to make progress. Okay, let's see how it goes. But we want to believe that first step first. That's what the president has done yesterday. First step first, and then the others will follow. Please, before we conclude, let's ask Joshua Ango to just say a few words in conclusion. Just for 30 seconds, Professor Ango, just in few words, let's conclude this conversation with you.
I would say in 30 seconds is that one, whatever system we come out with, we must have a system to cross-check to ensure that leakages are blocked. Two, we should look at this as a total. You know, when subsidy was removed, very good, everybody welcome it. When exchange rate were merged, everybody welcome it. But that means we should now manage it. We should not leave it totally, nowhere else will you leave everything, because the exchange rate, as it changes again and it goes out of control, that affects the subsidy. That affects the oil, the fuel prices and everything. That brings inflation and everything. So what I'm trying to say is that there should be total, conscious, deliberate policy on the part of government, to ensure that there are no leakages, to ensure that there are better systems, to ensure that people are held, to be accountable for whatever they are doing, and then to ensure that we manage our exchange rates. We don't just leave it to chance. We have had a discussion on this in this program earlier. So I believe we need to do that. We need to manage it. The president said They will intervene when necessary. I think, they should intervene at any time they are, without coming out directly to show that they are intervening.
Thank you for your contribution. Of course, you're being professorial. We just can't stop you. But I want to appreciate you, for being here this morning with us. Yes, Ichoa Ango is a professor of finance and entrepreneurship. We appreciate you once more. Ayo Oyalawo, political economist, we also want to appreciate you and thank you immensely for waking up with us this morning. And of course, Honorable Ahmad Sajo, former Commissioner for Information and Strategy, Adamawa State, it's always a pleasure to host you on this platform.
Thank you very much.
Other NTA platforms. All right. Dr. Emeka Ukengu, development economist, we also like to thank you again for hosting you here and other platforms of NTA.
It's an honor.
It's our pleasure. All right, now let's talk some sports.
Well, that's it for us on Good Morning Nigeria today. We thank you for tuning in. Tomorrow is another day, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Join us then. We'll look after yourselves. I'm Kingsley Usadolo.
And I'm Kirian Umaya. Do have a wonderful day.